for the opportunity to be here today to speak to you. I appreciate and respect all of your time and the time of all the staff members that are here. Although I must say I am a little bit disappointed that 7 of your colleagues are missing after so many people have spent the day here. But nonetheless, my name is Rob McCann. I am president of Clear Cable Networks, a Hamilton-based company. We build better broadband for communities all across North America. Some of you may also know that I am a participant in the ICF Canada, the Intelligent Community Forum. And the Intelligent Community Forum promotes technology for communities in order to build inclusive prosperity, digital equality, to solve social problems, and to overall make communities better. My message for you today is to encourage you to accept the staff recommendation and move the environmental assessment forward so that, as our Labour Council friends said today, keep the opportunities open, because there is a tremendous broadband opportunity that may have been overlooked in all the things that are going on here. In December, the Intelligent Community Forum issued a directive that broadband should be treated as an essential service. Broadband access should be a right for all Canadians, equal in importance to good roads, to clean water, to reliable electricity, and to accessible transit. Broadband is a differentiator, and just watching throughout the course of today all the people accessing the internet, I know now that you also cannot run a city without broadband. Clear Cable knows from our experience that in Canada, the consumption of broadband access grows at a 50% compound annual growth rate, which means that in a mere 5 years, we'll need 7.5 times the capacity that we have in our city today. Now, intelligent communities all over the world are struggling with how to keep up with this demand. For service providers, it's a massive, capital-intensive, labor-intensive undertaking to be able to build that type of asset. But for municipalities, it takes an intense amount of machinery to approve the permits, to look at the designs, to get compliance, to disrupt the citizens in constructing all that. And it's very, very rare that a city has an opportunity to dig up 11 kilometers through the middle of the city in an area which is ideally positioned for massive intensification over the next little while. So it's really important that we do not overlook the broadband opportunity. I urge Council, while you're considering the environmental assessment, don't lose sight of the broadband opportunity. And if you should see fit to move forward with the LRT, then perhaps also take the opportunity to encourage the LRT project office and staff to look at those opportunities where we can work together with the service providers of this city to build common telecommunications infrastructure for the future. I'll leave you with one little anecdote. I work with service providers all across the country, and one small one that's not too far from here, it's owned by a family, said that they installed copper cables 100 years ago in order to connect farms together so they could talk to each other. And they said copper cables have got them 100 years of success. Today, that very same company is installing fiber optic cables to those farms because they say fiber optics will give them the next 100 years of success. So I urge you, please help set up Hamilton for the next 100 years of success.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rob. Within the time, I have Councillor Green, Mayor Eisenberger, and Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Green.
Thank you very much, Madam Acting Deputy. Through you to Rob. Rob, I just want to thank you for your work. You talk about fiber optics and connectivity in the digital age as being like utilities, water, electrical, phones. What do you think that opportunity would represent in terms of return on investment along that corridor? And in your opinion, do you believe that it would further expedite the opportunities for economic uplift as it relates to tech startups and this whole economy and industry around ICT?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we look at a place like Calgary, where they chose purposely to run fiber along the LRT corridors, they used that to connect together, first and foremost, the municipal buildings, but then also the educational institutions, because researchers really need that high bandwidth, high capacity. So they were able to inspire an entire industry that didn't really exist around the LRT simply because of the access that was available. But beyond that, we know that in this particular city, we have a growing demand for broadband. It's not just that the fact that the consumption grows at 50% compound annually, but that there are more residents that are coming here, and they're residents that are living connected lives. So the return on investment goes far beyond anything we can measure in terms of GDP. We're really talking about value for investment and quality of life.
I appreciate that answer, Rob, and through you, Madam Acting Deputy Mayor, you're a guy in ICT that has to look into the future. Are there examples, or do you see a correlation between cities that invest in higher order rapid transit and the future of technology? Do they go hand in hand in your relationship as your experience has been with the intelligence communities around the world?
Yeah, so I am a technologist, you're right. So I like all this talk that we've had about futures and what is going to be the future technology. And the fact that some folks think that LRT is a stale technology. I look at it as a mature, predictable, and reliable technology with which we then build around all of the other things.
And are there any other cities that you've been to that have that integrated with the transit system? I know you said that KW has looked at it, but just give us maybe a global.
Yeah, so another great example is the city of Surrey, BC, which is also an ICF recognized smart community. They have a dig once policy, which really means that any time they're going to open a street, and they are in the middle of deploying an LRT through their main corridor they call International Drive, where they also have hospitals and medical facilities as such. So they have this dig once policy, and I think that we're seeing this emerge more frequently with progressive cities all over North America.
I certainly appreciate taking time out of your successful, very busy business there and with Clear Cable, and appreciate your leadership on the Intelligent Communities Task Force led by the Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Fred Eisenberg.
Thanks, Rob, for your presentation and your work on the task force. It's been invaluable, and we're making some very significant progress, I think, in terms of understanding what our needs are and how we might address them going forward. And I think you've touched on, I think, a clear and present opportunity relative to the LRT and what that means when we open that road up. So can you, in terms of quantifying the value of that kind of a fiber optic network, broadband network running right through the heart of our city, it sounds good unto itself in terms of, we'll have connectivity, but it really opens up a lot of potential future opportunities in terms of business, tech companies that might want to come here, speed and ability for people to get digitally connected. So I don't want to lead it too far, but can you paint a picture for me in terms of what you know and understand?
Sure, yeah. So, all that fun futuristic stuff is nice, but like I mentioned to Councillor Green, it's very difficult to measure in terms of GDP. But where a very real, tangible, accessible opportunity is that today we are asking our service providers, all of us in this room, to get us higher speeds. And we often hear folks say, I want to be a gigabit city. And the challenge, of course, for those service providers is that they have to build infrastructure. And if, provider A builds some infrastructure, and then provider B builds some infrastructure, and provider C builds some infrastructure, as the planning department will tell us, we run out of space in the medians and we just can't put more in. Moreover, they're spending tons and tons of money, lots of capital, which keeps these prices high for the bandwidth for all of us. And we end up as a city with more what I call street furniture, those little cabinets that we don't like all over the streets. So by opening up this opportunity and saying we have this trench that we're going to open, and bringing the service providers together to say, how about you collaborate and we put a common infrastructure, whatever that infrastructure happens to be, we save money for every one of them, which would be a first, by the way, in the country. This is unheard of today, so Hamilton has the opportunity to be the first. And if this is built, this common infrastructure between all the service providers, then we save them money, they can deliver broadband at lower costs, and that is super positive. Failing service providers working together, the city has an opportunity, like Surrey, like Calgary, like the others, to put that infrastructure in and de-risk the service providers to a point where they can then enter markets that they might not have entered before.
So, and thank you for that, Rob. And my understanding is, and you would know better than most, that the current challenge is that there isn't room right now in some of the corridors that we currently have underground to actually lay more. I mean, we heard that from all the service providers that came in saying, there's no space. We don't know where to put it. Yep. Even if we wanted it, we couldn't do it right just yet.
Exactly.
So flush that out a little bit more for us.
Yeah, well, that is a reality. Like I said, there's so many folks scrambling to build their own infrastructure that we have literally run out of space in the corridors, particularly the primary corridors, because everyone likes to get down those straight streets right through the city. So really, because the assets need to be moved, we all know that they need to be moved in order to accommodate the LRT, because we can't have them underneath it for accessibility reasons. So since they're being moved, this is the time to do that.
So it opens up the opportunity to actually get that cable in there, which otherwise we may not be able to do without tearing it up ourselves.
Exactly, that's right. Yep.
Appreciate it, Rob. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Rob. And I think Councillor Marula has regularly stated in emails that 80% of the $1 billion will be spent on renewing infrastructure, both above ground and below ground, to shift it away from the location of the rails, because you can't have a sewer or a rail in case it needs repairs. And so I would certainly expect, at the same time, because we're looking to grow up instead of grow up in this area, you need more broadband capacity. So I am positive our staff are taking this down, Paul Johnson and his staff, and that we would involve your industry to replace their cable over down the street. But while you're at the podium, you mentioned you have a friend in a rural area that's putting in fiber. Why don't you do it in Ancaster? We've been trying for years to get that done. And so can you tell me why no carriers picked it up?
Yeah, it really comes down to density. It is very, very difficult to service big distances at packages that are affordable and acceptable to the folks who live in those areas.
So how did they put hydro in 100 years ago?
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, and we did have the infrastructure funding from the multiple levels of government in order to help accommodate power and telephone. And we're starting to see the same things happen now. We have the Connect to Innovate Fund, $500 million from the feds. We have the $280 million from the province. We have what's expected to be a $750 million fund coming from the CRTC. All of these are designed to get all Canadians, all by 2020, speeds greater than 50 megabits per second download.
And the chairman's giving me a little latitude to go off order here, but if you are interested in doing it in rural Hamilton, contact me and I'll get you whatever resolution you want.
Okay, excellent. But now just don't lose sight that the intensification that's happening in Hamilton. We've heard so many people, like the millennials, say that they want to live in these smaller locations downtown. And it's very difficult for broadband providers to service intense markets like that unless they're able to build more infrastructure and do it quickly and affordably.
We hear you. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Partridge.
Yes, thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and more of a comment than anything, but I know we both sit on the Intelligent Communities Task Force, and one of the focuses is to look at putting the broadband more into the rural area. And so as we move along in that, I'll certainly keep Councillor Ferguson informed. But I wanted to say thank you for locating your business in Flamborough. And I just wanted to say as well, you've been here all day, as have many, many, many people watching what's going on. But you're able to run your business from your laptop and from what you're doing here. Now, is that because of the infrastructure and the Wi-Fi that we have downtown already?
Well, for me, it's because I have some really great employees based here in the city of Hamilton who take care of things for me. But certainly, I think as we continue to see consumption of resources, and I'm sure we'll have some constituents here who would tell us that the access is not nearly fast enough. But certainly as we see more of our digital lives come together, work, play, and such, that what we have today is simply not enough. It may be comfortable right now, we may be able to get our emails about, but moving down the road, that's just not going to be the case.
And I appreciate that. And Madam Deputy Mayor, I want to circle back to the discussion about the infrastructure. If the LRT were to go forward, and in terms of putting the cable down that with the infrastructure that needs to be there, Metrolinx has said they will pay like for like. Well, we don't have that infrastructure there to begin with, which is for the broader bandwidth and accessibility. So to your knowledge, has there been any discussion at all about moving forward with that possibility?
Well, so my discussion with you today is really about keeping the opportunities open and accepting staff's recommendation to move the environmental assessment forward. I think there are lots of things that could still be worked out. I think there's lots of opportunity for discussion. I do think that we are living in a positive environment where we have the Mayor's Task Force and we have a significant service provider engagement because of the efforts of the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
And so, you know, we really need the opportunity to stay on the table so we can figure those things out.
Thank you. And, you know, we heard earlier that regardless of whether it's LRT or BRT or some other form, other options for rapid transit, there would still be some infrastructure required. So if we went with BRT, there would still need to be you know, some infrastructure, roads dug up, and so forth. And so there would still be the opportunity, I'm assuming, with relocating those services that are currently underground, because they're pretty crammed down King Street and Main Street. There are so many cables and so much infrastructure and piping and sewers, and you know, it's really quite a mismatch under there. So even if it wasn't LRT, even if it was BRT, that would still need to happen. And, you know, and I would suggest would still be able to include exactly what we're talking about here, which I believe as well is so very vital to our city. So I'd like to keep that conversation going. We do have our staff present here. We have Metrolinx. Well, we did have our staff here from LRT, but just to ensure that you know, that this component of it is included in the discussions going forward with whoever the operator would be, that we look to have more included and not just replacing what's there. Even though they've said that, you know, the taxpayer will have to pick up the cost for anything that isn't already there because it's like for like. But I think it's very important that our city does have that broader connection. And Madam Deputy Mayor, I'll circle back with you offline about the whole rural connectivity. So thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you. Councillor Farr.
Mr. McCann, you're an intelligent guy, part of an intelligent community, and we hear about other options and alternatives, but I'm sure you're aware, are you aware, that right now what we have before us is one option. There are no other alternatives. I have not heard of one. And we have been working towards this one option for about a decade now. So are you aware of any other BRTs or flying squirrels or anything?
Well, as you would probably recognize, I don't frequent this venue very often. What brought me out today was the fact that I do understand that this is the option that's on the table, and that if the matter at hand doesn't move forward, then all of it stops. And I want to make sure that that doesn't happen.
And if we were really lucky, through you, Chair, are you hearing the same message I am? We would just go to the back of the queue, and what you're talking about is sooner rather than later provide a greater broadband service and build and intensify in the right 11-kilometer stretch. That would take much longer, would it not? Because we'd go right back to the drawing board. Through you, Chair, are you getting that same information in your intelligent community?
Well, I must say I'm probably not qualified to speak to the politics of it, but to your last part, bigger broadband now, while the opportunity is at hand, is the urgency for me.
And we have that one opportunity that we're debating here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate that. And I'm going to call Bill Boyd Wilson.